I personally, I don't vote for politicians to give me holidays. I vote for them to give me policy. It's a good policy, all right? Okay, you gave us a holiday, great. But I cannot dismiss the reality that the same people that voted for that holiday voted against the George Floyd Policing and Accountability Act, voted against the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, etc. So let's talk about the disconnect between what we celebrate in this country and who we actually are. And Bridget, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that disconnect that you just started with, I think is one that a lot of us feel as Black and brown folks. I think it's really tough to live in a country that really plays in our faces in so many different ways. They say one thing one day, they want to amplify us, celebrate us, but then that's not really borne out in the kinds of policies that we're seeing. And so I'm kind of with you. I appreciate Juneteenth. It's always been a very big part of my cultural expression, and it's something that we've really expressed ourselves, as a family. Like I grew up going to Juneteenth celebrations, but having a day off of work for some of us, not all of us, is not the kind of policy change that we actually need to see meaningful improvements in the lives of Black and brown folks.
Wosny?
Yeah, the holiday thing is sort of in line with the kinds of things we get from, especially the Democrats, right? It's a lot of gesturing, a lot of symbolism. It's rarely anything ever concrete that will materially benefit the lives of Black American people. So, obviously, anytime you can have a day off from work, I'm all for it. I think it's great that as a country we would reflect upon what the meaning of Juneteenth is. But yeah, I don't know that we have anybody in Washington with the stones, the requisite gumption to actually get something done, like you said, with policing and other things that disproportionately affect Black communities in this country. So yeah, I look at the Juneteenth holiday as more of Nancy Pelosi and kente cloth. It's more the same for me.
Brother, well said, by the way.
Thank you.
The dynamic of Juneteenth, we call it a celebration, but I want to caution people. When they call it a celebration, typically that means you don't know exactly what it is. So I will provide some education here. Juneteenth is actually a tragedy. It's a tragedy that highlights the reality of white power structures trying to create and keep a permanent underclass in America. Now, you definitely have the power and the might of Black folks, our ancestors during that time, fighting to be more free, fighting against the oppressor. But here's what has happened now. We have accepted the holiday. We have accepted the celebration without accepting the struggle, without accepting what the oppressor did, without providing remedy of how to overcome those oppressive forces. So my question, and I'm gonna go back to you, Bridget. Do you think there's a danger with the newfound commercialization of Juneteenth? And how can we use that, or this movement, this sexiness, so to speak, to the advantage of Black folks moving forward and progressing the agenda?
Oh my God, I mean, you said it, right? I think that when I heard that they were going to be making Juneteenth a federal holiday, like Waz said, it's always nice to have a day off work, but that means that it's so easy for these things to be whitewashed, sanitized, and corporatized. We all saw that Walmart brand of Juneteenth celebration ice cream, things like that really take us away from the fact that we should be interested in liberation, right? And so like all of these, I think it's so easy for brands and corporations and political elected officials to just to sort of cheapen what the legacy of Juneteenth that you were just speaking to by, throwing these little, very self-congratulatory, little efforts to celebrate it. And so I completely agree with you. I think that, we need to make sure that we're having conversations about how we can materially, have actual impact for our lives. And getting a day off work doesn't really do that in my book.
What's thoughts there?
Yeah, the idea that they would corporatize this remembrance, like that falls right in lockstep with basically every single thing that we do in this country, right? We commodify something, we're gonna sell it. They're gonna sell you Juneteeth banners. Club promoters are gonna throw Juneteenth party nights. If we're gonna commodify everything, I'm not surprised by that. But what I would hope for from people with emancipation, with Juneteenth, with civil rights struggle, is to remind people that revolutionary acts can't take place in this country. And I think a lot of people feel like there's nothing that can ever be done. People feel very defeated. I would like people to think of Juneteenth as something as that revolution happened here. Big change, a fundamental shift in how business is done in this country. And that's what I would hope that people would take from the holidays. Like, we can do incredible things here when we fight hard enough and we put our heads to it.
There's a pattern with the American government. Anytime there's a counter narrative to their own corruption, what they would do, they will hijack the narrative by co-opting the narrative, embracing it, and trying to make it their own. I'm going to give you another example. When they decided to give King a holiday, okay? The Dr. King that we hear about is the curated Dr. King up until 1964. That's because there was an intentional effort to dismiss, hide, and to disallow things on the record that Dr. King said, such as this country was way more racist than he ever imagined. He talked about universal basic income for Black people. That was a radical idea. He said, we need to do that now. They eliminated that from the curation of Dr. King. Gave him a holiday, named a bunch of streets after him. Same people that were building Dr. King statues were the ones that Dr. King was fighting. Isn't that ironic? So they stand antithetical to all of his policies, but they will give him a statue. Why? Because that's the great fake out. But this country has become very good at masking the corruption and the bigotry and racism with putting a nice presentation on the front. And this is where we are with Juneteenth. Now, I'm glad I'm hosting today. Nobody asked me my opinion about Juneteenth, okay? I'm glad I'm here because I'm telling the truth. The challenge is this. We go from most people not really knowing what Juneteenth is to a whole lot of people having a barbecue and a celebration and a parade. You skipped the lesson. But that's by design. That wasn't unintentional. They don't want you to get that part in the middle, okay? What can we do? How can we bring the middle back? How can we bring the true education of what Juneteenth actually meant, not only to Black folks, but what did it say about the character of this country? How can we bring that back to the forefront? Bridget, I go to you.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it is through exactly what you're doing today, continuing this education part of it to really catch people up. People who didn't know what Juneteenth was just a year ago, to really catch them up to really the spirit of what this day is about. And I think it's also just the accountability piece. I think that we need to make sure that when elected officials do the photo op or put up the tweet or whatever, that we make sure that we are loud and clear that that is not enough. They need to be meaningfully centering us in so many different ways to really impact our life. We're not gonna be satisfied with the tweet, with the photo shoot, with the ice cream, whatever. And then if they're not going to be able to really do that, then we will vote them out. And so I think it's a lot of different pieces, but I do think it really starts with what you're doing right now through educating and having these conversations and making sure that like our voices are really centered when we talk about Juneteenth, and we don't let it get away with just being like a day that people have off work, that they throw a barbecue or what have you.
Wosny, what can we do?
Yeah, and man, I would encourage people to not fall in for the banana in the tailpipe, right? Of this symbolism stuff that I mentioned earlier. I would hope that Black people understand when it comes to Juneteenth, like again, a material change to the lives of the people in this country happened when we abolished slavery, right? This wasn't some symbolic thing. This was actual change in the lives of Black people. And I would hope that people would remember this and get off some of this symbolism stuff, right? Like, Our man Joe Biden, Sleepy Joe, he puts a black guy up there to head defense, plucks him straight off the board of Raytheon, and we're supposed to be like, yay, black people, as if, the lives of people that are affected by US foreign policy, poor brown people all over the world, as if anything different is going to happen to them because they pluck some black dude off of the board of Raytheon. I would hope that black folks just get off this symbolism kick and keep our eye on the ball.
Juneteenth, we've had Juneteenth ice cream. There was a museum that had Juneteenth watermelon salad, all right?
Oh my God.
We've had, that's real, brother. I reported on it just a few days ago, brother. They had a Juneteenth, listen, they had a Juneteenth menu that included red soda.
Oh man.
No joke. All right. So we've had Juneteenth everything except a Juneteenth policy. We've had Juneteenth ice cream, but no Juneteenth policy. You know why? Because generally, the people that gave you Juneteenth don't actually care about your black suffering. They do not care if you progress. They are not concerned about your development nor the inequity that exists in America. So at this point, how do we rally? How do we take their momentum, use it against them? So here's a recommendation that I have. Juneteenth is going to continue to grow because you will have more corporate sponsors. The brands are going to connect at a deeper level next year, year after, because a federal holiday is forever. All right, they don't take those back. You got a crowd. You got a crowd. You could talk to that crowd. You can mobilize that crowd. You can register that crowd to vote. You can tell that crowd about corrupt ass politicians. You can also provide economic connectors to that crowd. You can bring those economic dynamics to that particular crowd. I'm thinking of ways that we can make Juneteenth better than just a celebration of a concept that's typically unknown to many. With our ability to write, I'm gonna go to you, Woz, on this one. With our ability to write, right? We can put pen to paper, we can type an article. How important is it to include concepts of what happened during the Juneteenth dynamic? To include some of those concepts in a modern context so that those who are currently consuming our information are aware of it?
Man, it's hard, especially with all the noise and clutter around topics of race these days in America. It's hard not to fall into the trap of muddling the message and getting bogged down in a lot of this culture war stuff that happens. Because honestly, I think people want to be involved in something that's uplifting and is, I think a positive that is associated with this country. Like a positive happened when this event occurred. I think it's just important to stay on that and talk about the power of people coming together. And look, make no mistake, that was a bloody ass war, right? The bloodiest war in the history of this country. We would hope that for further changes and progress in the lives of black people, we don't gotta come to that. But man, it was about organizing a bunch of people and being like, look, we gotta get this done. And that's what I would hope, that in our materials when we talk about this, not get bogged down on culture war type of stuff, and just get people around to the idea of how powerful a unity movement can be.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks. I really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.